Now, in the studio with me, we have Seth Grae, President and CEO of Lightbridge. Welcome, Seth.
Thank you.
And we also have, coming in from our Washington, D.C. hub, Dr. Katie Huff, U.S. Assistant Secretary for Nuclear Energy at the U.S. Department of Energy. Thank you so much for joining us, Katie.
Thanks so much.
And we wish you were here in person too. We know you were the previous week, but this is the beauty of technology. We can still bring you right back to COP from wherever you are in the world. So thank you for joining us. And it would be remiss not to note to our audience, and we have hundreds of thousands of viewers that are tuning in right now and that will watch this over the coming days on demand. So it would be remiss not to also explain that Katie is actually the highest ranking official in the US government for nuclear energy. She oversees the largest budget the US has ever had for nuclear energy, including for work at national laboratories, universities, and private companies. So that's really exciting. Congratulations on that role and the important work that you do and oversee as well. And let's start by going to you, Seth, as a beneficiary of DOE's support. Lightbridge has been able to really to enjoy the work that is being put forward and that the support that is going towards seeing nuclear innovation make it to commercial viability. So talk to me a little bit about how the support from DOE has really provided companies like Lightbridge the help that it needs to succeed, and what it's like being here at COP.
Well, I'll start with what it's like being here at COP, which is, I think, leading and following trends in the world. We saw about 10 years ago the International Energy Agency show that there was an increasing use of solar and wind power and predicting more, and policies followed that. DOE was a leader there, and then investment followed that. Now we see the International Energy Agency showing an increase in nuclear power, a strong upward trend on predicting much more. And we're seeing Katie really leading the world on the policy response, on implementing it, on supporting the United States as a world leader. And we're seeing investment starting to follow that in the private sector as well, that really very often can't analyze nuclear technologies and wants to see the US Department of Energy, its national labs, move forward first before the private investors come in. And specifically at Lightbridge, right now, MIT is starting work under a grant from Katie's office to study Lightbridge fuel in NuScale's small modular reactor. We're the beneficiary of 2 GAIN vouchers at Pacific Northwest National Lab and Idaho National Lab. And we're finalizing a new strategic agreement for irradiating our fuel in the Advanced Test Reactor, which has become a user facility for the US industry. So when you say Katie's leading the largest budget, the largest efforts, it's really, I think, the United States stepping up and really leading the world. And we're seeing that in the US participation here at COP and many events around the world where people are looking at the American government officials and really impressed with what they're doing.
So we should say kudos to Katie and then more broadly the Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm, as well. And why is this happening then, Katie? Let me come to you. Why exactly is the DOE getting behind nuclear to the extent that it is? Is it because nuclear energy can play a significant role in this transition to clean energy? How do you think about this?
Yeah, thank you. That's exactly right. And Seth is right. You know, this is a whole of government approach, and we're really lucky to be here at a time when climate is recognized as such a critical component of our energy choices. Not only is it the cost of our energy system and the security of our energy system, its reliability, but also climate impacts that are driving our decisions in the Department of Energy. And as we look out on a clean energy transition, a combination of clean, carbon-free renewables and nuclear energy paves a way forward that emphasizes things in addition to climate, like national security, energy security, and reliability. So with new nuclear technologies, we expect that these will be excellent backups for the kinds of renewable energies we will need to deploy in the coming decades. And if we're going to get to a net zero economy by 2050, we have to do it really quickly. And I think we need to emphasize the solutions that we already have that are ready to deploy. And nuclear is one of those, being the United States' single largest source of clean electricity, even just today.
Sure. And it's been historically unusual for the Office of Nuclear Energy to be so active in major events and involved in so much international engagement. So it's fantastic that that's happening. I'm wondering why it's happening at this moment. Is it because of the focus on global energy security? What do you think about that? Is it uniquely happening at this point in time because of current events? Or is this something that has always been a trend that we are long overdue to support and move forward?
You know, one of my favorite senators, Senator Cory Booker, routinely says, we drink deeply from wells that we did not dig, right? And so I'm in a position like that. You know, many of my predecessors have really set the groundwork and laid the foundation, dug the wells from which we're drinking right now. The prominence of nuclear energy comes from continued emphasis on research and development that will make this technology cheaper, more affordable, easier to build and deploy, safer, cleaner, and stronger and more resilient. You know, that existing technology that we rely on today is safe and reliable, and next generation technology will be even stronger, like with the accident-tolerant fuels being developed by Lightbridge in collaboration with DOE, and a million other technologies supported by our R&D. And all of that is set forth not on top of 1 year or 2 years worth of advocacy, but decades worth of continued research and development, deployment and demonstration by both private industry, universities, national laboratories, and of course supported by DOE. You know, so it's not the first year, but it is the culmination of decades of this kind of work.
And it's more evident than ever that nuclear energy really has a role to play in stabilizing global energy security. And so tell us a little bit, Seth, what is the benefit of nuclear power for global, not just global security, but also domestic security in the United States?
Well, it's extremely important because only nuclear power can provide reliable, around-the-clock energy that is never intermittent and doesn't rely on fuel coming from adversaries of the United States or our allies. We're seeing now Europe facing the potential of a winter without enough heat for everybody, without potentially enough food production at acceptable costs. And I think that Europe, or our allies there, are starting to realize that unless they keep the nuclear power plants open and deploy more, they're only forever going to be reliant on Russia. There actually isn't a solution that doesn't include a significant increase in nuclear power. And as Bonnie talked about, and as Katie's been leading, the US deployments in Europe of new nuclear plants, both to government-owned companies and private companies that are working with Americans to deploy nuclear plants there, small and large, are not only going to be good economically, they're going to be good for the security of the United States and our allies, and just holding the West together on not having to give in to Russia.
Let me come to you with the same question, Katie. So nuclear energy gives security independence. It gives energy independence and improves security for the United States and countries around the world. So would you say that it is high on the priority list for achieving energy security?
Yes, it absolutely is. You know, we need diversification of our energy supplies. We need energy, like Seth was talking about, that's reliable on a 24/7 grid. And we do need to look at how we can ensure that our fuel supplies are as secure as possible. You know, and we would really like to move in the United States and along with our allies to a world in which we do rely less on untrustworthy partners. Undersecretary Jenkins mentioned this, and I will raise that today we do rely on about 20% of our enriched uranium coming from Russia, but this is an opportunity for the United States and our partners and allies and like-minded countries with, you know, peaceful nuclear energy to work together to identify ways to bolster our supply chain for that fuel. Thankfully, we have a few years and we have the technology. And this national security imperative really is an incentive to ensure that all of our nuclear fuel comes from the most trustworthy sources. And we are in a position, of course, with nuclear fuel that it only requires refueling every 18 months or so in a standard reactor. And so it does give us a little bit of time to bolster that supply. And in the Department of Energy, we're working collectively on uranium strategies that focus on reinvigorating that conversion and enrichment capability for our fuel cycle.
Well, I was just about to ask you a little bit about the technology and what the nuclear reactors look like, what makes them advanced. And it sounds like there's a lot of innovation, there's a lot of advancement that's happened with fuels and the reactors alike. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about what makes them so advanced today?
Sure, yeah, I think a lot of it comes from these decades of research and development into both advanced fuels, advanced coolants, and of course, advanced passive safety systems. You know, if you think just about the passive safety systems, we're looking at technologies that, like in the AP1000, allow simpler and more nature-driven, natural circulation for our emergency core cooling systems that should allow nuclear reactor to be walk-away safe for hours upon hours and days upon days, negating the possibility or likelihood of any kind of meltdown. You know, beyond this, of course, advanced fuels that are resistant and resilient to high temperatures, like accident-tolerant fuels such as Lightbridge, but also tristructural isotropic fuels called TRISOs that we're seeing in these advanced reactors. These all drive toward a scenario in which no human intervention could create an unmitigatable accident. You know, and we're really focused on that kind of activity, as well as activities around securing and sustaining our fuel cycles. Advanced reactors have a variety of advanced coolants and fuels, moving well beyond the light water coolants and enriched uranium oxide fuels that we've become used to, and moving into a space of extremely robust TRISO fuels and accident-tolerant fuels, metal fuels, and even liquid fuels, along with coolants such as liquid metals, salts, and high-temperature gases that can really maximize the inherent safety of these reactors, both from a physics perspective and from a thermal hydraulics perspective.
So I'm hearing security, I'm hearing safety. I think this panel is going a long way in changing some of these public perceptions that might plague the nuclear sector, but ultimately we really need nuclear energy to be part of this energy mix as we transition to clean energy future. And companies like Lightbridge are contributing their innovations and technologies. So I'd love to hear a little bit more from you, Seth, about what are the innovations that you're most proud of, you're getting behind, and what are your upcoming plans? Why are these strategic partnerships and being a beneficiary of some of this DOE support so critical to moving these innovations forward to commercial viability?
It's literally true that the Advanced Test Reactor is the only available reactor in the world to us to irradiate our fuel and move this project forward. It's literally true that the Department of Energy is the only organization in the world that would make high-assay, low-enriched uranium available to us for the testing. It's literally true that the TREAT reactor, the transient test reactor in Idaho, is the only place we could do the transient testing under accident conditions. So when we say we couldn't move forward without DOE support, it's literally the case. There is nowhere else we could be doing this. And to have the chance to bring high-assay, low-enriched uranium to an advanced fuel for current reactors and the new small modular reactors, to bring increased power output, to bring longer fuel cycles, to bring enhanced non-proliferation benefits. These are all good for domestic and export use, and it's really fantastic to see these facilities become what are called user facilities. They were created for the government, and the government is making them available to U.S. industry.
And the government is doing that because obviously nuclear is part of the energy mix. It's part of the renewable energy mix. So how do you think about that, Katie? How does nuclear energy work with renewables?
Yeah, it works great. You know, because renewables are variable and reliant typically on the weather, it's critical that since our consumption of electricity and energy in general aren't reliant on the weather, we do need to, or at least differently reliant on the weather, we need to back up those renewables with a reliable energy source that is carbon-free. And right now, you know, a lot of renewables are backed up on the grid by peaking gas plants, and we've recognized now this year the sort of challenges with reliance on too much natural gas. And as we move forward into a carbon-free future, nuclear power represents a possibility, particularly with advanced reactors that may be more equipped to load follow on the grid. We expect that those nuclear reactors will be much better at working together with renewables for a completely carbon-free grid. And in addition to that, when we look out over at the system costs of something with a lot of variable generation sources on the grid, it's critically important to recognize that something like at least 20 or 30% of the available capacity needs to be reliable for for the lowest cost systems. If we were to deploy a 100% renewable grid, it would require an incredible build out of going well beyond the capacity that we need on an average day, so that on their very highest consumption day, we have energy, and that can be extremely costly. So to reduce the total cost of our grid, we do need to have some reliable sources to back up those renewables and variable energies, and nuclear can be it.
And the DOE is also supporting the Advanced Test Reactor and Treat Reactor at the Idaho National Laboratory. This is to support innovation, it's to advance nuclear technology. Why is this support so important to you, Katie?
Seth is completely right. These are world-class machines with capabilities that we need to be at the bleeding edge of forward-thinking advanced fuels, to have complete confidence in the behavior of those fuels and materials during accident transients and other power surges or changes in operation. And these reactors are, they're just a real demonstration of US leadership and capability in this context, and they really support our ability to license and certify materials and fuels.
So, Seth, we're at COP here. This went full circle from the beginning. I asked for your reflections of COP. And I will come back and say that one of the major themes that we've been hearing quite a lot is that of loss and damages to less affluent nations that have been impacted by climate change. There's various tools to address these losses and damages, like loans from the World Bank that could be supporting these impacted countries, and they could actually use those loans to build SMRs and gain more energy independence. What could this mean for the nuclear sector?
What I'm hearing from the developing countries here, including the host Egypt, is that they're very serious about wanting the advanced economies that they view as having built their economies on fossil fuels as having some sort of meaningful assistance for what they perceive as already climate damage in the developing countries and more to come. And what I'm hearing from the developed countries is trying to find ways to reach an agreement here. And I think that SMRs, as you say, really can be a central part of that helps prevent further climate change with zero emission nuclear power. It can bring meaningful financial assistance in the form of financing, be it through multilateral organizations like the World Bank or domestic like the US Export-Import Bank. And it's ways that the United States can bring funding into another country and really verify what it's being used for, what the benefits are, and have some real accountability for the money deployed in other countries, but also benefit US manufacturing and US exports. So I think the SMRs are, a very good approach, and I'd add, with the advanced fuels that make them even better.
That's really exciting. Let's look to see if that pans out, and I'd love to get final thoughts from Katie as we close out this segment. It's really been a pleasure to hear from you both and to just get some insight into what's happening in the nuclear sector, the role nuclear is going to be playing in the transition to clean energy. And Katie, your final thoughts, please. You were here at COP. What are your reflections? What are your thoughts on what Seth just said as well? And what are your hopes for what comes out of this COP27 in Sharm El-Sheikh, Egypt?
Well, I had such a great time in week one. It was my first COP. And going to visit and seeing so many pavilions focused on bringing people up into this energy transition, not leaving any nations or humans behind as we move into a clean energy future, was really inspiring. I was thrilled to see such a nuclear energy presence in both the Atoms for Climate Pavilion, the Nuclear for Climate Pavilion, the American Nuclear Society Pavilion. It's really nice to see such a nuclear presence, given it's the second largest source of clean electricity in the world, second only to hydropower. It really has and deserves a place there at COP, and I was so thrilled to see it and be part of it. But some of the most important conversations that I was able to have were in pavilions completely unrelated to nuclear energy. And I think there is a lot of conversation that we can and should have around the mixtures of energy systems that lots of different countries will need. They will all need to be customized to those energy systems and those countries and their particular needs and desires. And I really hope that we will be meeting nations where they are to find the solutions that are right for them. And I do hope that in many cases it will include nuclear power, which I certainly believe to be one of the fastest ways we can move toward a solution to all of this climate change threat.
Perfect. Thank you so much for those reflections. Thank you both for contributing your expertise to and sharing this knowledge with our viewers from around the world and those who are in studio here at COP27. Appreciate you both. Thank you.
Thank you.